It's time for Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive.
Joan, as always, exceptional work from you from, your TV days all the way up to today. You're truly exceptional, and thanks for this great show you have.
It's time for Joan Esposito on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Thank you for being here this Monday, February 10th. God, I hope you had some fun over the weekend, because it's getting ugly. It's getting ugly. Something that I mentioned with one of my guests last week, which seemed kind of more hypothetical last week, doesn't seem quite so hypothetical anymore. This idea that the courts will save us. A federal court ruled that Trump's executive order saying, no more birthright citizenship. Well, the court put that on indefinite hold because, as they said, which of course everyone knows, you cannot change the Constitution of the United States by writing an executive order. Okay, kids. And there have been some other things. The federal freeze that was supposed to be put into effect. The judge said, no, until I hear good arguments in court, you're not going to put that into effect. And whether or not the Supreme Court will come to our aid, at least the circuit court, the federal judges, seem to be willing to abide by the Constitution. And one of the hypotheticals I raised with a guest last week is, what if Donald Trump decides to ignore the court? What if he just says, I don't care. I don't care what you say. Enforce it. If you think it's so important, you enforce it. Because some of the agencies that had their funds frozen after the judge ruled, no, those funds need to be distributed. I will hear arguments Monday, and I will make a firm decision after that. A lot of those agencies are saying that the portals that they go to get funds still are not working. So whoever was in charge of undoing that thing decided no, just no. And J.D. Vance today is talking about that, about how if the courts don't rule the way Donald Trump wants them to, if they find some, silly law that gets in the way, then Donald Trump should just ignore them. I wonder how John Roberts feels about that. J.D. Vance is coming out and saying that if Donald Trump wants to do something that's illegal and the courts say, no, it's illegal, that they should just do it anyway. And the very famous example, which I also talked about last week, was our President Andrew Jackson. The U.S. Supreme Court told him that he could not forcibly relocate Native Americans. And he famously replied, well, if they feel that way, then they should figure out how they're going to enforce that. And then he instituted what has come to be known as the Trail of Tears, where Native Americans were forcibly relocated, and many of them died in the process. He just said no. This is what Donald Trump's overarching goal is, kids. To castrate the Supreme Court and Congress and the Senate. He has a majority in Congress. He has a majority of Republicans in the Senate. Some of this stuff that he's trying to do by executive order, he could try to do by law. He could try to do it legally, change the law or write up a new law. He's got the votes. But he'd rather do it by executive order. And then when the courts say no, it looks right now like the plan is to ignore the courts. So how do the courts enforce their rulings on in those instances where people decide not to follow the rule of law. U.S. Marshal's Office. That is the arm of the court system that is tasked with enforcing the court's rules. The U.S. Marshal Service is part of the DOJ. The DOJ now led by Pam Bondi. Wait for it, kids. You're going to see an order. If this progresses, you're going to see an order from Pam Bondi, the new Merrick Garland, and she is going to order the U.S. Marshal Service not to enforce court orders. And then Donald Trump's takeover of the judicial branch of government will be pretty secure. So, George Conway this morning was on Morning Joe. Remember George Conway many years ago? Used to be a Trump supporter. George Conway is the person who introduced his then-wife, Kellyanne, to Donald Trump. But George Conway saw what Trump was doing in his first term. And first, George Conway was quiet, and then George Conway was vocal. And then eventually, George and Kellyanne got a divorce because Kellyanne is still all in on Donald Trump. Remember Kellyanne Conway, the woman who invented the phrase alternative facts? No, Donald Trump isn't lying when he says something that's not true. He's just presenting alternative facts. Remember that? Yeah, hard to forget. Well, George Conway was on Morning Joe. Both George Conway and J.D. Vance went to Yale Law School. And George Conway was talking about these new statements being made by J.D. Vance that Donald Trump should just ignore the courts. He should do what he wants to do. And George Conway felt that that was a really bad thing for J.D. Vance to say. It would be even worse thing if that is the road Donald Trump decides to take. I'm just going to share this sound clip with you now. Here's George Conway, former conservative attorney, on this morning's MSNBC Morning Joe. Listen to this.
J.D. Vance is an embarrassment to the law school that I attended. But the fact of the matter is he's telling us something that we should have already known. And last week I said it. They are not going to obey court orders. They have decided that they are going to push the boundaries on executive power by basically infringing on the Article 1 power of Congress. And they are violating they're violating the Constitution, the text of the Constitution in the birthright citizenship issue. They are violating the text of statutes by having DOJ run around and do all the things that have been doing these executive orders. There's no reason that this government that has decided not to obey the laws and the Constitution of the United States is going to obey a court order. And as you know, Joe, having practiced law, there's really only one way that courts can enforce their orders when somebody is being contumacious and refusing to obey an order. And that's to send the U.S. Marshals out to take somebody in and to hold them in contempt or to otherwise enforce court orders. Well, who does the U.S. Marshal Service work for? The U.S. Marshal Service is part of the United States Department of Justice. It reports to Donald J. Trump. And what's going to happen here, mark my words, is that at some point, they are going to basically tell the United States Marshal Service, do not enforce any of these orders. We will not obey them, and you are not to enforce them. And once that happens, I hope it doesn't happen, but I know in my heart that it will. Our 236-year experiment in the federal rule of law, in democratic self-governance for the United States of America, in American constitutionalism, is essentially over.
That's what we're heading for. The one thing, though, that if you notice, it's J.D. Vance out there saying this, not Donald Trump. Donald Trump is smart enough to use other people as trial balloons. If there is an uproar over this idea that somehow the court orders will be ignored, if there's an uproar, well, Donald Trump steps in then and says, you know, I never meant that. I don't know where J.D. got that idea. He was really overstepping. He misunderstood what I said to him, blah, blah, blah. Having somebody like J.D. Vance do it gives Donald Trump some cover, gives him some wiggle room, so that if this trial balloon explodes in their faces, he points the finger at J.D. Vance, which is also, kids, let's be clear about this. This is also why he is letting Elon Musk run amok in the government. Because if something really blows up, he can say, oh, you know, Elon misunderstood, he overstepped, or the famous, he didn't stay in his lane. That's, I think, my favorite. He didn't stay in his lane. And then Donald Trump walks away with relatively clean hands. Those of us who see the game for what it is will understand that all of these ideas were signed off by Donald Trump. J.D. Vance didn't say the court's orders should not be enforced without clearing that with Trump. Elon Musk is not preventing access to federal systems without Trump's explicit knowledge and permission. But people who aren't really paying close attention to politics, who don't think beyond just the surface soundbite, when Donald Trump steps in, if something blows up and says, oh, it wasn't my idea, that was J.D. Vance, and I'm really sorry, or, sorry, he would never say I'm really sorry. He would say, his fault, I don't know where he got that, he's a bad man. And most of the people who, even the non-MAGAs who voted for Trump because they wanted a Republican, they're going to say, well, look, oh, my God, Donald, he didn't even know what J.D. Vance was doing. And if you believe that, I got a couple of bridges I'd like to sell you. Amy Klobuchar, Senator Amy Klobuchar, was also on Morning Joe, talking about kind of this same issue. And I'm glad Democrats are not letting this one slide under the radar. Talked about this same issue of the fact that Trump is currently running roughshod over our judicial and legal system, and that the Republican Party, at least so far, seems A-OK with that. Just peachy. Oh, yeah. Well, we didn't really care about those court orders anyway. As a matter of fact, a lot of Republicans have been complaining about the judges who have been ruling, no, this is illegal, this is illegal. And they're somehow blaming the judges. They're blaming the judges. They're not saying, well, guess that one was illegal. No. It must be the judges who don't like Trump, and that's why they're ruling this way. Senator Amy Klobuchar this morning was talking about these executive orders and the Republicans who are whining about the judiciary. This is really good. Listen to this.
Here's what's weird about this. They control both houses of Congress and the presidency. They can do this the right way, and they can pass a budget, and they can give their tax cuts to the wealthy if that's what they want, and we will do everything to fight it and to make the case to our constituents and to the American people. But why they have to pretend that this is a coup when the courts have every right to enforce the law? At that inauguration, I made that point. We have that inauguration in the Capitol for a reason, not at a presidential palace like they do in some countries. And we have the Supreme Court there for a reason, because it is a clear message to America that we have three equal branches of government in this country. They are messing around with this, and both Mike Lee and J.D. Vance are students of the Constitution, and they know it's wrong. But again, they are doing this at the behest of one Donald Trump. And it's our job in Congress to stand up to it.
Yes, it is. And she makes a good point. Any of this stuff that Trump wants to accomplish, he has Congress. He has a majority in Congress. He has a majority in the Senate. Have somebody write up a bill, change the law or write a new law right now, unless it's something that requires a 2/3 majority, right now Republicans can pretty much do whatever they want to do. That's the crazy part. You know, it's one thing to do executive orders when you don't have the power to get something done legislatively. But Trump does. He's just choosing not to. It is, it's very interesting. This morning, you know, I hope you are increasingly proud of J.B. Pritzker, because he is really doing amazing things, and he is speaking truth to power. You know, he was at a press conference this morning. Karina's law about domestic abusers was signed into law. And somebody asked him about the tariffs that Trump is now imposing. And he was real clear about it. And he was real clear about connecting the dots and showing the regular folks how these tariffs, which everybody seems to know but Donald Trump, are really taxes, how these tariffs are actually going to increase the cost of the goods we're buying now, like, say, for example, beer. Listen to J.B. Pritzker today.
So if you didn't hear, the question was about the 25% tariffs that the president has now imposed on steel and aluminum. Just last week, I was visiting a brewery of a startup craft brewer who was telling me that if the aluminum tariff that had been threatened by President Trump was put on, that the cost for him of providing beer in a can would go up substantially and may make it so that they would have to go out of business. It's already expensive. We've got barley that comes across the border from Canada that would be subject to the Canadian tariffs that Donald Trump wants to put on, and add on to it aluminum tariffs, and you're going to put people out of business. These are enormous tariffs, 25%. And it seems to me that this is a tax on working families. This is what Trump is all about. I want to remind you why he's doing this. It is not because he is looking for trade fairness. It appears likely that this is about paying for the tax cut that he intends to provide to the wealthiest Americans. So the effect on all of us and on the entire country is, in particular working families, is everything's going to cost more. And it's a tax on everybody, again, to pay for what he's going to introduce shortly, which is a tax cut for wealthy people.
And again, he has the votes. Congress isn't going to stand up to him if he wants to resume the big tax cut that wealthy people get, the 1%ers. Nobody's going to oppose him on that. But, you know, he's just, he doesn't want to deal with the increase in the deficit. By some estimates, if he does some of the things that he has promised to do, he could add $5 trillion to the deficit. So how is he going to get those tax cuts and still say he's working for a balanced budget? Well, Head Start, Meals on Wheels, aid to people around the world who need medical help or who might be starving to death. Yeah. Oh, and let's increase the cost of barley coming from Canada and increase the cost of the metal that's going to go into the cans. And, you know, so instead of whatever you're used to paying for your 6-pack of beer, what's it going to be? Because it isn't just one thing. It isn't just the barley that's going to be more expensive. The can's going to be more expensive. You are going to see a world where a lot of our social programs, if not all of them, are cut or eliminated. You're going to see a world very shortly where things are more expensive. And where's all that money going to go? We need to make Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos and Peter Thiel and Elon Musk richer than they already are. That's what's coming. The phone lines are open, as they always are for the first hour of the show, Monday through Thursday. 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. You can call me or talk to Paul Shivari. He'll put you through to me. Or you can shoot me a text. And I've already got a lot of people on the text line. I want to read this one. Hi, Joan. It's so easy to tune out now, put one's happy playlist on, and ignore what's going on. I'm scared that our democracy will die a silent death. I just hope we have people strong enough to push back on all this. I will say again, nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something. I know it's stressful, and I know it's exhausting, and it kind of feels like a game of whack-a-mole. You know, you have these protests, Democrats get all fired up, and now we have J.D. Vance coming out and say, by the way, you know, I really think we could just ignore all these court orders that are telling us that the stuff we're trying to do is illegal or unconstitutional. I'm pretty sure we can just ignore that. And it feels like there's something else that's so important you can't ignore it. To the person who sent me that text, I will tell you, find what you're comfortable with. If there's a cause, libraries, book banning, women's reproductive rights, immigration rights, whatever you believe strongly in, get involved with the people who are doing that work. You know, maybe you just send them a donation. Maybe you find out if they need volunteers. Maybe it's an organization you can join. Pretty much all around, if you're in the sound of my voice, or even if you're listening on your computer far away, there are local Democratic organizations. There are state Democratic organizations, but there are usually smaller ones that reflect your area, maybe your county, maybe your village, maybe your neighborhood. Find out who they are and what they're doing, and join that. Find out what you care about. Think about what you care about, and do your darndest to protect that. And also, I was Indivisible, I think, was also now promoting this. I mentioned it last week. There is an app that you can get on your phone if you have one of the smartphones. The app is called, you can go to the App Store and put in 5, that's the number 5, calls, 5 calls. And it will tell you, it will ask you, first of all, what are the issues that you're interested in? Here's what's going on right now. And, oh, my God, you know, this is something I really care about here. You click that. It gives you a synopsis of the issue and what's going on. Then it connects you with your congresspeople and your senators. And if you don't know what to say, it gives you a potential script. You know, if you are looking for what to say on this issue, you could say this: activism from the recliner. If that's the best you can do, that is still very much worthwhile. We need to keep the fire lit under the Democrats. Keep them moving forward. I'm going to take a break. We're going to get to the phone lines. I'll try to read more of the texts when we come right back after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
My good friend Dave from Hawaii texted in and asked me to comment on the CBS News poll that they, what's the date on this, that they released yesterday. And it's really, I find it fascinating. What got a lot of attention was that people are responding that they think he's tough, energetic, focused, and effective, that he's doing what he promised, and they so far like what he's doing, except when they don't. Except when they don't. They don't like the idea of the United States trying to take over Gaza. They don't think he's doing enough to lower prices. Generally speaking, with the exception of China, they don't want more. They don't want tariffs on Mexico or Europe or Canada. They don't want people being detained in internment camps while it's determined whether or not they should be deported. So they don't like a lot of the stuff that Trump is doing, that Trump is talking about doing, and that Trump promised he would do and isn't doing. They don't like that. But gosh, he sure is energetic, don't you think? Okay. All right. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, he's not really doing enough to lower prices. We don't want tariffs on Mexico or Europe or Canada. We don't want people detained while they're trying to decide if they should be deported. We don't want the United States to take over Gaza. But we approve of the guy. Yep. And again, what I think is interesting is there aren't a lot of illegally undocumented, paperless folks coming across the border with Mexico. Joe Biden, much to a lot of Democrats' consternation, pretty much put a stop to that. And yet Donald Trump sold this idea that somehow Biden represented open borders and that he was going to put a stop to that. So even though his specific actions don't make people happy, they still believe that he's doing the right thing on that border, man. You know, that Mexican border, because, whoo, big trouble down there. Again, you know, Republicans want these voter ID laws before people can vote. Sometimes I think there should be tests about what's going on and what do you understand about what's going on. And, you know, this idea that Joe Biden was for open borders couldn't be more wrong. Joe Biden alienated a lot of people in his own party by clamping down on the border. There's a trickle compared to what there was before. But it doesn't matter what's real. Donald Trump says whatever he wants to say. And that gets amplified by outlets like Fox Cable. And, yeah, people think, oh, yeah, there's a real huge crisis at the border. And Donald Trump, by God, we may not like a lot of the stuff he's doing, but he's sure, you know, doing good work on the border. Oh, it's enough to make your hair spontaneously combust. Dominic is on the line from Chicago. Hello, Dominic. Thank you for the call today.
Cool. Hello. First time I ever called.
Thank you.
And then I just wanted to say on why is Trump not going through the political process, even though he's got, you know, the other two branches.
Well, that's what I don't get. You know, it's like, but maybe there's a method to his madness. Just like J.D. Vance saying, you know, we don't have to do something even if the courts say we do. Maybe he's also trying to get Congress and the Senate to understand that he doesn't need them. He doesn't need them. They are powerless and they better just do whatever he wants when he does ask them to do something, because he can get it done without them. And then the whole world will know that they don't have any power. I don't know. He thinks like a mob boss. That's all I know.
Yeah, he certainly is, the dictator is coming out. And his number one reason is time. Like Hitler took him 50-something days to end their political thing, and take over. So if he had to go through the process, it would take him way too long. And then they don't want to put in words, They don't want to make that bill because it's going to point directly to the Republicans. And last is it'll expose the Republicans. Some of them are going to lose their seats.
That's a really interesting theory, Dominic. That makes a lot of sense. He's doing what he wants to do and what he knows is illegal and unpopular, but because he's doing it by executive order, he gives those Republicans who have to run for re-election in the midterms, maybe he gives them some cover. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. Yeah. He did it.
I would say, like, definitely is part of it, my number one reason is the Hitler thing. We got to slow him down. I don't know if we could stop him. The only thing I would like to add is we do got federal judges that are helping, and ordinary people. It was an ordinary person at the Treasury that exposed the Musk thing with the kids. So I'm optimist. We might not be able to stop him, but we have to slow him down.
Yep. That's exactly, I think, what all the protesting is about. And I think that's kind of what Amy Klobuchar in that soundbite I used from Morning Joe, I think that's kind of what she was talking about, too. And she said, why doesn't he go through legal channels? He's got the votes. I mean, when he was first elected, people were saying, look, just wrap your head around the idea he's going to get this tax cut for the very, very wealthy. He's got the votes. It's not something that needs a 2/3 majority. And just, it's not something Democrats would support. But it's going to happen because it's something he wants. It's something that his donors want. And he's got the votes to do it. But he's not even, he's not even for that. I mean, he just wants, I don't know if you remember this because it didn't come up a lot. But when he was running, he said at one point in one of his campaign stops that he felt the executive branch of government should be, instead of it being like 3 equal branches, he thought the executive branch, it should be more like a pyramid with the executive branch at the top and then the congressional and judicial branches under the executive branch. And that is the plan.
Yeah, that's bad. That would totally conflict with the Constitution, the root of our democracy. It would conflict with that. But whatever.
Yeah.
I'm optimist. I mean it. I'm so optimist. It's too big. We're too big for him to rush us through all of this. But it could happen. History will tell us that it could happen. But, yeah. Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
I got a diehard Trump friend. Me and him are real good buddies, even now. And he called me and was starting to say, oh, man, my uncle's on Meals on Wheels. And somebody else in his family's on support. And they temporarily got cut off when he did that thing. So,
and I bet they were shocked. Shocked. He wasn't supposed to do this. He was supposed to cut those other people, not us.
Yeah, and I said, well, it sounds like you're coming over now. And he goes, oh, I'm not ready to do that yet. I went, what? Okay, it's like, even with the damage happening, he couldn't say he was coming, I'm done, right? I'm coming over. And, okay, there's the target, folks.
I think what just happened, that conversation you had with him, I'm hoping that conversation is the canary in the coal mine, because just as he didn't think this would happen to his family, I think over time people are going to remember that last time he was in power, they didn't like him, and they're going to slowly but surely remember that they didn't like him, but it's going to take every family being touched by this, like that woman in South Florida who represented the Venezuelan community. Republicans promised they weren't going to come after us, and now those promises are lies. It's going to take that. It's going to take people in your family not having any more Meals on Wheels, being informed that the Head Start program that you sent your kids to isn't going to be in effect anymore because there's no more money for it. I mean, this is going to end up hurting regular folks. How many people are going to be happy that a 6-pack of beer goes up in price significantly, and they start, paying for that, and all of a sudden Donald Trump's tariffs aren't going to look anywhere near as good to them as they did when he was talking about them. Yeah. People are going to have to suffer.
And my buddy's like a real big beer drinker. When we had this talk, the beer thing didn't happen yet, but now I'd like to ask him what he feels about his beer. His beer's going up 50% or something.
Yeah, because we import the barley from Canada. There's going to be a tariff on that. And the metal for the cans, there's going to be a tariff on that.
Yeah, they're not going to really come around until after the pain. And then some of them will still back this guy. Anyway, thank you for.
All right, thank you for the call. I hope you call in again in the future, Dominic.
I've been listening a long time. First time. Thank you for doing what you do. Thank you.
You're very, very welcome. Let's take a break, and we're going to wrap up. We've got calls. We've got texts. I'm going to get to all of it when we come right back after this.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
We are taking your calls. I am reading your texts. I got a text from Allison who said that Brad Schneider is having a telephone town hall tonight at 6:30 p.m. Allison, thank you for that information. If you are a constituent of Brad Schneider, I hope you can join the telephone town hall tonight. He is my congressman, and because I pretty much have no life, I'm sure 6:30 tonight works for me. Yeah, like it pretty much would every night. Thank you for that information, Allison. I appreciate that, and we will see. I'm going to double check the phone number. I don't want to read a phone number on the air that somebody texted without checking it first. So I will check this phone number, and if it gets me where I want to go, I will mention it on the air. Thanks, Allison, for that. In the meantime, Audrey is on the line from Chicago. Hey, Audrey.
Hey, I'm so glad that I was able to reach you. First, let me just say this. I enjoyed you on Channel 7, and I'm a first-time caller, long-time listener. Okay, so let me just say this. I can't really think of the link, but it was on Instagram. It was a young man said that on February the 28th that we need to do a blackout. And what he was saying is that do not buy from corporate companies or restaurants. Just do, just buy from mom and Paul. Mom and Paul.
That's a great idea.
So I wanted to get that out.
February 28th. That's 28th. The last Friday of February. I think, and frankly, I've been talking about making those changes. I mean, to do it all on one day so corporate America can really understand what's happening and gets the message, that's great. I think we should all be changing our shopping plans. As I announced, look, Jeff Bezos doesn't get any money, doesn't make any money off the Washington Post. As a matter of fact, that costs him money. Where Jeff Bezos makes his money is Amazon. So next time you want to buy a doohickey on Amazon, go to Amazon, look it up. find out who makes the doohickey, the Smith Company, and then close Amazon and use your Google search bar to search the Smith Company and buy whatever you want directly from the company and cut out Amazon. Yeah.
And also, can I say this, because I am an African American woman, and then, when I was in school, because I'm close to 70, we wasn't taught African history, Black history. But when I did find out later that the Montgomery boycott, for some strange reason, I thought it took a couple of weeks. Then I found out it was over a year. This person that mentioned about having a blackout, February the 28th, said if it doesn't work one day, then we go to 3 days. Then we continue to increase the days that we do the blackout.
Yep. That's the only way. That's the only way we can have an impact. It's so overwhelming. You think, I'm just one little person. What could I do? But if you change your habits, we all live in communities where, there are little independent businesses, I know it's easier to just lay on the couch and use your computer and order something online. But some of those little businesses don't have an online sales presence, and let's support our local businesses. That's good for them. It's good for us, and maybe it sends a message to corporate America.
Yeah, because I told my daughter what you said about you would go to Amazon, and then something you would want, you would look up the seller, and they go to that seller website and then buy for them. And I told them that. And then also, let me say this, and even though you know this, that the only way we can win is hit them in the pocket. Hit them in the pocket. That's the only way, because the way that it looks, Donald Trump is not going to abide about what the judicial judge say, the judicial system. So we have to do it in their pocket. And if enough people stand against that, to the point where it's, from my understanding, I don't know what the true target is being hit hard. So if we can hit them in the pocket, they are going to let Donald Trump know that, his constituents, that they are upset. So that's what we have to do. Hit them in the pocket, pocket.
We're going to do
thank
that.
You so much.
And, there are big companies. Thank you so much for the call. I just want to mention that there are big companies who are resisting, who aren't donating to Trump, who are resisting the efforts to eliminate their DEI. Nordstrom is one. Costco is one. Elf Cosmetics is one. There's a whole list of companies that are not taking a knee and kissing the ring. So it's important, too, to find out what those companies are and support them. I had let my Costco membership expire, and when I read that they were doubling down on their DEI, and also, by the way, they were raising the hourly rate. Some of the Costco workers now make $30 an hour. $30 an hour. And Costco's always been famous for a really good health insurance that they offer people. So let's support the companies that are doing it right. What do you say? Okay, let's go back to the phone lines. Our good friend Jim from Chicago is on the line. Hello, Jim.
I was really disappointed with Trump's energy levels so high. I thought he'd participate in a couple of plays, but I was disappointed he didn't get in the game. But a couple of things that defy explanation. How about the release of millions of gallons of water in California going nowhere? Who's responsible for that? But who's responsible, Joan?
Donald Trump turning on the spigot, Jim. Is that what you mean? How he turned on the spigot? And he doesn't understand why California officials, they're all Democrats, why they didn't just turn on the spigot. Here's what Donald Trump did. Donald Trump ordered water to be drained out of a reservoir in Northern California up by San Francisco. And this water was then flooded down and basically went nowhere and did nothing of any use. That water would, at the height of the fires, it would never. Do you understand, folks, that San Francisco and Los Angeles are very, very, very far apart? It's not like the water would have run down the state of California and put out the fires. Not only is the water release that he ordered, would it never have helped Los Angeles, but that reservoir is there, and it needs to be filled right now when they're getting the snow melt and all that, because that's the reservoir that farmers use come August when it's been dry for all summer and there hasn't been any rain and they're running out of water. That's when that water in the reservoir is tapped to provide water for agriculture. So now that Donald Trump has turned on the spigot and the water has basically run to nowhere, now come August when the farmers need it, not going to be there.
Yeah, and Joan, real quick, too, India had 100 prisoners taken in shackles back to India. The prime minister went nuts. He said, how can you put these people in shackles? Now, this is what you can expect from this, whatever you want to call this, diabolical takeover of the United States government. But he's shackling people. He's going to open up Guantanamo. He can't wait to put people in prison. I mean, cruelty is the Republicans, they've always been a cruel party, but now they're went overboard with it. Now cruelty is, and then real quick, when they asked a Republican today, they asked him something about, he said, Trump wanted a mandate. That was a mandated, that was because Musk was supposed to take over and save all this money for us. And the people interviewing this guy just take it like it was gospel. I can't believe how dumb and imbecilic our information center is. I never seen it like this, where they just say, okay, well, Musk is going to take over. I mean, first of all, have you ever heard an individual in any administration that I can recall behind a government, running a shadow government? I mean, I've never heard of such thing. I mean, these weekends are just terrible to get through. You think you'd get some good news, there'd be some breakthrough, but
okay, Jim, you have to put yourself on a news blackout over the weekend. I can't, because I can't show up Monday morning not having any idea what's gone before. But even like Saturday, I found myself reaching for my phone, and I was looking at my phone, and I was like, well, I could open up my Kindle app and read a book, or I could touch these other news apps. And I looked at him, and I was like, what are you doing? Put your phone down and walk away, young woman.
I know, and you get 3 hours this every day, Joan. Think about with this lunatic and this is beyond the pale. I mean, they're trying to fundamentally change the United States of America right under our nose, and you've got 3 hours a day, Joan. And all I can say is good luck, because every day is stranger than the last one. Thank you, Joan. Thank you much.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Jim. I appreciate those kind words. And, I'm not kidding. I really had to do that over the weekend. I picked up my phone and my finger was hovering over that Washington Post app, or maybe I should go to Blue Sky. And I thought to myself, you can't operate at a high stress level day in and day out. It isn't good for you. And it can make you feel so overwhelmed that it seems like it starts to feel like you're paralyzed. I get that. I absolutely get that. You've got to, more than ever, find something that takes you away from all this. Maybe we could all learn how to meditate. I don't know. My doctor keeps telling me that I should be meditating. But it's like my mind, it's hard to calm your mind when you feel like, this isn't just, I'm really worried that there's going to be a big new income tax. Woe is me. I'm very worried that I'm going to wake up to, tanks in the street. I read a book about dictatorships and fascism, And they interviewed this one woman. It was a country that had been a democracy, and it had to end up fighting long and hard to retain any kind of democracy. But they interviewed a woman, and she said, I literally woke up one morning and I looked out the living room window and there were tanks. And she said, I thought to myself, how did this happen? It doesn't happen suddenly, because if Donald Trump sent the military to all the cities of this country, people would stand up and they would fight. So they do it by dribs and drabs. They go after one thing that seems kind of important, but maybe not enough to really get worked up over or protest over. One after the other. Donald Trump is going to come after the media. Anybody who dares speak truth to power, they are going to come after them. They are going to try to tell the Congress and the Senate that they really have no power. They are going to get the judiciary to realize that they are utterly ineffectual. It's going to be dribs and drabs, the death of 1,000 cuts. But you know what? If you're subject to the death of 1,000 cuts, you may not suffer all that much from each cut, but you end up just as dead. Let us take a break and for news and come back with more after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
I'm on TikTok. Well, that's actually an overstatement. I'm not on TikTok. I have the app for TikTok. And on TikTok, I'm following, I don't know whether it's 5 or 6 people because, I'm a big user of social media. One of those, a couple of those people are political, and most of the other people review books. I guess there's something called Book Talk, which I'm not sure if it's its own thing or a separate thing. I'm learning it, okay? I'm learning it. But one of the people on TikTok who I follow for politics, and like I said, it's rarefied air, is Cameron Stevenson, who, you heard his voice a lot. He is somebody who covers Arizona for the Copper Courier, and he is on TikTok where he does these little videos where he, explains stuff. Paul Shivari has grabbed one of Cameron's TikToks, and this one is on deportation flights. Paul, go ahead and play that.
I thought this was fake when I first saw it, but this is an actual post from the White House. A photo of people in chains being marched onto a plane as if it's some sort of beautiful patriotic moment and not a dystopian violation of human rights. But it looks like that's going to be par for the course for this administration. Trump's treating his entire mass deportation plan like it's reality TV. About 1,000 people were arrested by immigration and customs enforcement agents on Sunday in a handful of cities across the country. Agents were told to be camera ready with their riot gear, pose authoritatively, and to walk people they've handcuffed past people filming so they can get a good shot. They even had Dr. Phil come with them in Chicago, where he lamely tried to interrogate detainees.
Where are you from?
Where I was born or where I'm from?
Where are you born? You've been deported before from the United States?
No. I'm not a sinner. I'm not talking about a lawyer.
And even though the past week feels like it's been years, this is just the beginning. ICE field officers have been told to make 75 arrests per day. And with 25 offices across the country, that's just under 2,000 people under arrest every single day. And this coming from a guy who just pardoned 1,500 violent criminals. One weekend, ICE doesn't have the best track record so far. They've arrested U.S. citizens, military veterans, and immigrants who are here through legal channels. People Trump tried to deport have been denied by the countries they were sent to because that's not where they're from. Except one flight that landed in Brazil, where officials there wouldn't let the plane leave because conditions were inhumane. The AC was busted, people were chained up, and there were mechanical issues with the aircraft. But even these failed deportations aren't a total loss for the Trump administration, because after enough failed deportation attempts, they'll move on to the next phase of their plan as outlined in Project 2025, concentration camps.
Cameron Stevenson joins us now, the founding editor and chief political correspondent at Copper Courier. And I have to tell you, I love listening to your video clips, your audio clips, because you don't just say, hey, this is happening and I'm really mad about it. You explain, this is happening, this is how it's happening, this is why it's happening, and if it's really awful, maybe, here's maybe something you can do about it. It's like a little baby civics lesson coupled with a news clip. And I really, you do such an amazing job, Cameron.
Thank you. First of all, it warms my print journalist's heart to hear you say that. TikTok obviously is such an important avenue to get information out because there's so much bad information there that I'm really glad that at Copper Courier and Courier Newsroom we have the opportunity to give these little civics lessons, let people know what the bigger picture of what's happening, especially during a Trump administration, as we're being reminded the second time around, just what a deluge of information and bad policy is getting thrown out on an hourly basis. Being able to step back and say, here's what this process actually means and what you can do about it, I think is vital for people to have that information. So I'm glad it didn't turn you off and send you back into book talk.
No, I do love book talk, but that's another discussion for another day.
Wrong with that?
Though I find that there are more books than there are times to read them. But what I think is really interesting, and one thing that I think Courier as a whole is doing really well, is you are multi-platform. Not everybody listens to the radio. Not everybody listens to a podcast. Not everybody goes on their computer and clicks the listen live button. There are some people who don't do any of those things, but they might see something on Facebook, and particularly TikTok is well populated by a younger demographic. And I don't know about you, Cameron, but we have these discussions all the time about how do we get the truth out to a demographic that maybe doesn't even know what AM radio is, or doesn't care about having a tab open on their computer to listen to me live. Somebody who maybe has other responsibilities in the afternoon. But particularly, my kids, as you might imagine, I'm always wanting to know, well, politically, what they think. What do you think about this issue? What do you think about this issue? And have you read anything about this? And my daughter finally admitted to me that she relies on me for the news. She doesn't listen to the radio show. She relies on me to send her a text with a link to an article. Have you seen this? What do you think of this? And
I've got the same people in my life. It's easier just to go to someone you trust. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why we are seeing so many people respond to our reporting on TikTok, is because I keep it personal. People know what they're getting when they see me come on screen. And that's the same with all of our reporters. And
how can I already follow you. Is there like a like button, that little heart thing when you come on? Should I be pushing the little heart thing? Yes, I should. Right. I should. I know that.
Most definitely. TikTok's like any other social media platform. The more engagement it gets, a piece of content gets, the more people see it. So, if anyone listening is interested in seeing our reporting on TikTok, not just in Arizona, but we have a national outlet, Courier Newsroom, and then we're in about a dozen other states. Sharing that content, one, gets it to your friends so that then they can text you and ask you for more information. And then two, it gets our reporting out to more people who algorithmically are also seeing things like the video you just saw. We just listened to about Trump's deportation flights, but there's a decent chance that they're getting misinformation about it. They're being told things that aren't true about who is being sent on those flights. and they aren't getting the full picture of the constitutional rights that are being violated. And so it's very important that this information gets out, because the other information's there, and if we aren't at the forefront of combating that, then it's just going to go unquestioned.
Yeah, and the nice thing about the things you post is nobody has to take your word for it. If you've got the pictures, by the way, what I'm saying about people in chains, might sound outrageous, but look. And
yeah.
Have you guys done research on demographics? Like what age group gets their information where?
Yeah, I mean, it's as the years go, it's becoming more everyone a little bit more online than anywhere else. But traditionally, the younger you get, the more, I guess, modern the method of news. Radio and cable or broadcast news is usually a bit of an older demographic, except for me, who I like having something on when I'm driving around in my car. But then people who are younger are usually more on TikTok and Instagram, and then there's, Facebook in the middle, and then if you're a bot created by Elon Musk, you're all over Twitter.
Yeah, really. I think you're absolutely right, and I think that getting the message out on different platforms, I saw, and this was probably at this point too, maybe even more than 2 years ago, somebody did a demographic study of cable news. And basically for CNN and MSNBC, the average viewer was like 60, 65. And for Fox, the average age for a viewer was like 70. Wow. So, yeah, it was really, really shocking. But, before I got into radio, many decades ago, when dinosaurs roamed the earth, I used to be on local television news here in Chicago. And even now, when I see the demographics, it's older people. For local news, it skews a little bit younger than cable news, but it's still, last time I saw a demographic breakdown, local TV news was 55 plus. Because they were bemoaning, that they don't have any of the young people that supposedly we're always being told advertisers want the 18 to 40. I don't know what the demographic is, but it's not 55 plus.
Whatever that disposable income demographic, which I think it shrinks a little bit every year. But
yeah.
The interesting thing I've found, though, is that even though we are going on, all these different platforms and making sure we're reporting the news in different areas and regions, different spaces where people get their information, a lot of the tried and true methods of reporting and storytelling are the same. A lot of times, our national outlet and our local outlets, in addition to just clipping segments from cable news, we also clip segments from state legislature debates. These hour-long things we'll cut down into 30, 60-second clips. And these things get millions of views, these cable news clips or these legislative clips. And it's because people still want this information. It's still important for them to get, and they need it. And when it's presented to them in a way that they're able to access it, they can't get enough of it. And so it's interesting because a lot of advertisers or whatever, they want people to pivot to these different platforms and try and change the way that they report, when really it's the tried and true of just giving people information that they need and telling them what they can do about it. It's still what people want.
Who, what, where, when, and why.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
exactly.
Cameron, we need to take. Speaking of formats, we need to take a break. Make a little money here. Cameron Stevenson and I will be coming right back after this.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Joining me is Cameron Stevenson, founding editor and chief political correspondent at the Copper Courier. And while I've got you, Cameron, I suppose we should talk about the news of Arizona a little bit. I don't know, just maybe.
If we got time, there's a few things going on that might be interesting.
Oh, share something, please.
Oh, wow. Well, I think the biggest thing that we've got going on right now is just, I mean, unfortunately, everything is tying in nationally right now. But our Attorney General here, Chris Mays, who I will remind people anytime I mention her name that she only won her election by 280 votes. She is more or less leading the charge by attorneys general across the country in filing lawsuits to stop the Trump administration's very blatant illegal acts, such as these deportation flights, which just got blocked in courts this morning. She also was one of the first to start the lawsuit to block the birthright citizenship executive order, and she's currently filing lawsuits to stop the Trump administration from trying to freeze federal grants because that would just decimate the lives of millions of people here locally and all across the country.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. And I spoke with her about it a little bit ago, and she said the reason that she's been able to be so on top of it is because when this thing, you may have heard of it, Project 2025 is that
no, never heard of it. Don't know anybody who wrote it either.
Yeah, apparently. No, but when it was published and it said this is Trump's blueprint to essentially hold the country hostage, her office took it seriously, and they printed it out, and they spent the next year analyzing it, looking through all of the ways states could fight against these different actions, and doing the legwork previously in the event that he got elected, so that when he was elected, they've been ready to go, and they've been able to essentially build an attorney general coalition with 20 or so different states to do something about these orders. Whereas Congress, who you would think would be the ones who would not want their power encroached upon, have thus far been able to do very little.
That seems to be a theme. And it seems to be, I mean, they're complicit. They're afraid of Trump's wrath and Elon Musk's money. But they are also, I think the lesson is very clear. I don't need you. You are, I mean, Trump, it didn't get a huge press, but remember when Trump was relatively fresh to his second campaign, he actually said that he thought instead of all three branches of government being equal, he thought that the executive branch really should be like the top of the pyramid, and the other two branches of government should be underneath the executive branch. And that sure seems to be the end goal here.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, during his first presidency, his attorney, the U.S. Attorney General, Bill Barr, he believes in something called the unitary executive theory, which is that the president should have unilateral authority to do whatever they want. Elon Musk, he subscribes to a Silicon Valley technocratic writer called Curtis Yarvin, who essentially outlined how the president should be a CEO, like they are in a business where they have essentially carte blanche to do and say whatever they want, as long as it makes the people at the top money.
That seems to be the goal, isn't it? Getting the oligarch class out of the dire financial straits they find them in, and oh wait, no, they're already rich, aren't they? Yeah, forgot about that. A long time ago, when I was in television and I was negotiating a new contract, and it was going slowly, and there were some financial considerations, and I remember my co-anchor said to me, and this quote is going to tell you how long ago this was, but really, is the money that important? I mean, how many VCRs can you buy? And, you would think that if anybody in this country could stand up to Donald Trump, it would be the people who are so wealthy that they could set $1 million on fire and not even notice it. Instead, it's like the grassroots folks who are standing up and saying, you know, what about the Constitution? I will always be disappointed with the Zuckerbergs and the Bezos of the world, and that they couldn't be braver, especially Bezos. You know, maybe Zuckerberg has always been a weenie, and Elon Musk has always been an idiot. But Bezos bought the Washington Post and pretended that he really believed in democracy. I don't know what the heck happened to him.
You know, he
midlife crisis.
Midlife crisis. Something about when you reach a certain amount of wealth, you would rather burn $1 million, like you said, than see 10 other people get $10,000. It's about hoarding wealth as much of it you can, no matter how many tape recorders you end up buying, just so other people can't have it. And
yeah. Somebody said that, Elon Musk, he may have invested $227 million in Trump's campaign, but he has now reaped literally billions of dollars in revenue because of what's happened since Trump was elected. If you even part of the money that he has made just since the inauguration, he could basically house every unhoused person in the United States. Why doesn't anybody ever want to do something? Even the Astors, even the robber barons of an era long, long ago, as they were looking back at their legacy, I mean, they started building libraries and they were putting up museums because they didn't want to be remembered as the greedy robber barons that they were. And that impulse doesn't seem to exist in the current robber barons we have now.
You took the words right out of my mouth. In the last Gilded Age, at least we got libraries. This time we were getting, I guess, chatbots to take our jobs, which is troubling. But it kind of goes back to something you mentioned earlier, where people are developing a grassroots movement. They're organizing locally. People are beginning to realize that those robber barons aren't there to help us, and they're not going to, build any safety net to at least give themselves a decent legacy. Just last week, I was it was a very impromptu protest at the state capitol, part of a nationwide set of protests all on the same day, all at state capitals across the country. And this was a Wednesday, 12 o'clock in the afternoon, middle of the week, middle of the day. There's probably less than a week of planning for this protest, and easily over 500 people showed up at the state capitol, which was massive. And I think it really just shows that people are looking for a way to respond to what's happening in the world around them. And they want to organize, they want to build their communities, and they want to take on the barons.
Mm-hmm. Hakeem Jeffries mandated that all of the Democratic Congress people within a week needed to have a town hall. Are you, with the Democrats in Arizona, are you seeing that happen?
We did see I haven't been actively, scouring their sites for town halls, but I did see one from the representative we talked about a week or so ago, Representative Yasmin Ansari. Mm-hmm. She's a freshman congresswoman. She's Gen Z. She's big into climate, and she had one held pretty quickly after Speaker Hakeem Jeffries made that ask. And I believe the others are following suit, but we honestly at this point we only have 3 members of the House who are Democrats. One of them is Ansari. One of them is Greg Stanton, who does hold regular town halls, and one of them is Raul Grijalva, who's undergoing cancer treatment right now. Ooh. And so it might be a little trickier for him.
Yeah. Well, I just heard from one of my listeners on the text line that my congressman is reputed to be having a town hall tonight. In the seconds we have left, any one question you think I should ask if I get the chance?
Yeah, I would ask if you can't do anything because you're in the minority party, what can be done to pressure Republicans who are in the majority? Because there has to be people within that party who recognize, even if it's the most cynical thing, that their power as members of Congress is being taken away by the executive branch. And, if nothing else, couldn't you appeal to their greed and desire to maintain that power?
Really?
I'd love for there to be a more noble request, but I'll take any alliance I can get.
Yeah, whatever works. Cameron, thank you so much. Exactly. And again, Cameron Stevenson is on TikTok. Do they just put in your name, Cameron? And I can't remember how I found you. But I'm assuming your name works.
Yeah. You put in my name. My handle's This Is Cameron, or you can just look up the Copper Courier. I'm usually on that one too.
Okay. A semi-Luddite interviewing a cutting-edge technologist. Thank you, Cameron. It's always a pleasure.
Always. Talk to you soon.
Okay, we are going to take a break. We are going to talk about New Hampshire when we come right back after this.
Don't turn that dial.
A dangerous mistake to make.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, returns right now on WCPT 820.
From Arizona, we are going to transfer our attention over to New Hampshire. We are trying, as things move forward, to not only focus on what's happening at the federal level, but also to pay attention to what is happening in state legislatures around the country, because that is often an indication of things that we may see erupting on a national level. So our focus right now is on New Hampshire, and to help us learn what is going on in New Hampshire, we have Colin Booth, who is the political correspondent at the Granite Post. Colin, how are you?
Joan, it's great to be here. Hope you're doing well.
I'm doing as well as can be expected, Colin. I'm cranky by nature, and what is going on politically has not made me any easier to get along with. Let's just say that.
I empathize with that position 100%.
Yeah. I know that school vouchers have been a big issue in New Hampshire, and that is such an issue across the country. This idea that that basically the government should also provide for students who want to go to private schools or religious schools, or simply schools that have are not necessarily open to everybody. What's happening in New Hampshire, Colin?
Well, in a lot of ways, New Hampshire has been a test bed for all kinds of conservative legislation around vouchers. New Hampshire actually currently has one of the most expansive school voucher programs in the entire country, owing entirely to Republican majorities in the legislature. And right now, if you are making within 350% of the federal poverty line, you qualify for a very generous voucher package, money that comes directly out of New Hampshire public schools and goes directly toward private and oftentimes religious schools. And it is, it is set to only expand. Republicans they originally built this as a program that would help low-income people in the state. Now they expanded their majorities in both the state House and Senate in 2024 elections. So now they're looking to no longer make this a low-income program. They're looking to make this a universal program. So we are looking right now at either increasing that poverty guideline to 500% of the federal poverty guideline or possibly even just doing away with it and offering it to everybody. So it's pretty scary. And on top of that, we have a new Republican governor here in New Hampshire, Kelly Ayotte, And she has signaled, she's like, send it to my desk, baby. Just give me that, and I will sign it. I don't care what it is. So it's a scary time for public school teachers, for administrators. I talked to the superintendent of a district here. They are very, very concerned about the impact this could have on schools. And, in many ways, it's at the same time, this is a program that not that many students actually leave public schools for these, but overwhelmingly wealthy students who already attend private and religious schools, now it goes from them, their parents paying for those programs out of pocket. Now the state is picking up that bill. So it is just one of many ways that Republicans here in the state are working to dismantle the public school system in New Hampshire. And it is, I think, at greater risk than it's maybe at any other time in its history.
And, there's data that shows that these kinds of voucher programs significantly weaken the public schools. How do voters feel about this? Are they all in on this? And, those public schools, they're no good anyway. Let's just really kick the legs out from under them?
There's not a lot of good public polling about how people feel about them. What we have seen is that voters largely don't agree with Republicans on this particular policy drive. And Republicans, they're being elected kind of on other issues here in the state. So it is pretty concerning, I think, for a lot of families. We've had overwhelming public support in hearings against this kind of legislation. You will see public hearings that have 2,000-3,000 people who oppose. And then only at like 40 or 50 who are in support of these kinds of programs. But Republicans, there's a lot of dark money groups that come in that are funding these efforts. A lot of dark money people actually who are in place in the state government now. The New Hampshire's Commissioner of Education, Frank Edelblatt, he is steeped in the world of conservative dark money groups. He was actually responsible for bringing PragerU. I'm not sure if you're familiar with PragerU, but it's this ultra-conservative alternative education system. He's responsible for bringing it to New Hampshire schools, replacing curriculum with PragerU. And so it's a scary time for publication, for education here in New Hampshire. That's for sure.
Is it that a handful of Republicans with deep pockets are bringing this about, or is the populace of New Hampshire changing? Is this what the majority of the people who live in New Hampshire really want?
I think, in my experience, it's much more to the first option you said, where it's wealthy individuals. You look at public polling about what New Hampshire voters are concerned about. Education frequently is not in the top 10. It is a greatly overlooked issue in public policy. People are generally much more concerned about the economy, with jobs, with meat and potatoes issues. And education has become this, I would say it's been changed radically in the state, and Republicans have really made it a pet issue. They've run on it in very public ways, but it doesn't seem like the public is paying attention. It's fascinating, and it's disappointing, Well,
because I know you've also been reporting about how this is about the voucher program, yes, but Republicans also want to cut budgets for arts, music, languages, and the populace is okay with that?
That's another extremely scary bill. You know, we're seeing Republicans in New Hampshire kind of go at public education from multiple different angles, and you know, we're seeing this attack with vouchers where they're defunding the schools. This other way that just came up, it's a House bill that's moving through the legislature now. There's a big public hearing on it today. Basically, a Republican state representative wants to completely gut the curriculum of public schools here, take out all of those programs you've mentioned, arts education, languages, engineering, and technology, computer literacy. Basically, yeah, he wants it so the school districts can now make up their own mind about what the schools should teach, which is really frightening in a lot of ways, because a lot of these local school boards, a lot of these districts are run by very far right-wing activists who could, you know, this would be basically open the floodgates to whatever these, you know, people with no background in education whatsoever, to decide that the public schools now, what are they teaching? They're no longer going to teach the Holocaust. They're no longer going to teach any form of Black history. And so it really is very interesting. And we've seen this in a lot of ways. This has had we've seen a number of major news articles from Forbes talking about this. There's a public hearing today where something like 30,000 people across the state, every town. I have a friend who works in the policy space. He said people from every single town in the entire state chimed in to oppose this legislation. It is deeply unpopular, but Republicans, they expanded their majority in 2024. So even with enormous public pressure, we could still see Republicans passing this. It would be just another devastating blow to public education.
If it's enormously unpopular, even if Republicans have the votes, you know, most politicians I know, they want to do what they want to do, but they're not going to do anything that's going to put their reelection prospects at risk. If this is wildly unpopular, might there not be some Republicans who say, you know, guys, I don't know. I don't think I really want to have to defend this next time I'm running for reelection. What do you think?
You know, generally speaking, I would agree with you. And we've seen them we've seen Republicans kind of take their foot off the gas in the past when issues like this would blow up. But, you know, we have seen, you know, we're really seeing a newly empowered Republican majority here in New Hampshire. I think you're seeing it in other parts of the country as well, where, you know, things that scared them maybe a while ago, they don't scare them anymore, right? I mean, we just got a president. We just elected a president with the most heinous criminal record in the history of the nation. Republicans here have failed to deliver on many of the core issues that are facing the American people, facing the voters of New Hampshire. They're still getting reelected. So in a lot of ways, I think Republicans aren't afraid of electoral pushback, because Americans Granite Staters either aren't paying attention or they're paying attention to issues that aren't this particular issue. So it's a very, very difficult time. And I'm not saying we're alone in this, right? I think you're seeing this all across the country, where
sadly,
voters are often voting against their best interest in many ways.
Drives me crazy. But you do see it over and over and over again. Colin, we need to take a break. I'm talking to Colin Booth, political correspondent at the Granite Post, all the news of New Hampshire. We are going to take a break. We're going to be back with more after this.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
With me is Colin Booth, who's the political correspondent at the Granite Post. We are talking about the moves that the Republicans are making in New Hampshire. Kind of reminds me of some of the moves that we're seeing that we saw in North Carolina, where, you know, Republicans, even the ones who had basically lost re-election in a lame duck session, were trying to just ruin everything as they were walking out the door to hang on to any shred of power that they possibly could. I know that you have one little bit of good news for us, Colin. Democrats did manage to defeat an abortion ban. Tell us about that.
Yes, you know, like we were just talking about, in many ways, you know, Republicans have been empowered to this very conservative, very, you know, a new level of extremism, I would say, in their legislative agenda. But I think we have managed to get the message across here that abortion is legislatively off the table. Republicans put forward a 15-week abortion ban. There was a lot of Republican support behind it, but Democrats of various groups across the state, they managed to kind of organize, create public awareness that it was happening, and thankfully the Republican lawmaker who put it forward withdrew the bill recently after a massive and very sudden pressure campaign from a number of progressive groups, a number of Democratic groups. The state Democratic Party here was really instrumental in creating that public awareness about it. So they did manage to kill that bill. It was you know, in a bleak time, I would say, for Democrats in the state. It was quite a breath of fresh air. And I think we're hoping for more wins like that. I think Democrats across the state are trying to channel the momentum from that win to some other places, because it is, you know, between the flurry of national news and moves the Trump administration is making and the newly empowered majorities for Republicans in the state legislature, you know, wins like that are few and far between. But it does seem, at least for the rest
I want to
of
follow up and ask you about how did that particular win come about? Was this a one-off because of the issue? Was there some great leadership from some politician or from some activist? How did that happen?
I think it was a combination of factors. Abortion, like in New Hampshire, was a leading issue in the 2024 election cycle. Democrats forced the Republican governor to make a number of promises if she were elected, that she would not enact any further abortion bans. And so Republicans were already, you know, if they were to put forward with legislation, they would be subject to putting this new, you know, first-term governor under a lot of pressure to either veto the bill or break this very important campaign promise. So that was one area. There was already kind of an existing amount of pressure that Republicans were under to kind of get rid of this bill. On the other, but like I also said, you know, Democratic groups here in the state, they mobilized very, very quickly to bring public attention to it. There was a flurry of articles that came out. There was a lot of public pushback in terms of the hearings where this bill was being discussed on the radio, on TV. It just overnight, as soon as word got out that this bill was hitting the floor, you know, we just saw an unprecedented level of pushback. So while there was a lot of pressure that existed, I think without that kind of public engagement by, you know, the state party here and you know, groups like Planned Parenthood, I think without that, you know, Republicans probably would have tried to sail it through without too much, you know, without getting too much attention on it. So it really was a combination of factors.
Is there anything from this process that got this result that can be utilized to, say, fight efforts to cut, arts and music out of the schools? Is it reproducible?
I'd like to think so. I think one of the most important takeaways from this effort was that when Democrats can focus on a single issue and really, make that the core of their message and work as a united force, that to me says, that obviously creates better outcomes for progressive groups than when everybody tries to go after their own pet issue, their pet project. So it's tough. It's in many ways, this was a very context-dependent issue. Democrats had a lot of experience from 2024, kind of talking about abortion, kind of using their messaging on abortion. They knew how to talk about it. They knew which levers to push to get the public worked up. So, I mean, it's still an issue that polls very highly here in New Hampshire. There is enormous public support for robust abortion protections. But yeah, I think, just when these groups manage to focus on one issue at a time and push back, I think they find success. And it is challenging though, with so many, especially at the national level, so many issues are there one day and gone the next. They're we're seeing from the Trump administration just so much. Well,
that's part of the problem when Republicans basically try to bury us in all this stuff, is you can't pay attention. You can't give each individual issue the amount of attention you'd like to. And, what's big news today might not even be something that's mentioned tomorrow because there's some other big effort or some other horror coming down. It's, that's the same problem that we're going to have going forward. Hey, before we wrap up, I want to make sure we have a few minutes to talk about the upcoming Senate race in 2026. Talk to us about what that looks like.
Yeah, there is a lot of speculation going on in this race. Republicans are really eyeing this seat that has been held by New Hampshire's longtime senior senator, Jean Shaheen. She is the Democrat who is the ranking member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. She is very experienced, very influential lawmaker in the state. A lot of people say New Hampshire is Shaheen country. She is an absolute institution here. But now we're seeing it's kind of an interesting situation. Republicans, for some reason, they think this is a vulnerable seat. They think maybe Senator Shaheen will not run again. I think much of it goes back to just, they're empowered. They're feeling like, they had this good run in 2024, so why not push their luck? And so what's interesting is a former politician from Massachusetts is now saying, I'm probably going to be running for this seat. His name is Scott Brown. He was an ambassador under Donald Trump in his first administration. And one of the funny things about this race is, in 2024, the governor's race, Kelly Ayotte, who was elected, she made a big deal. Her whole campaign slogan was, "Don't mess up New Hampshire." She was playing on this idea that somehow being from Massachusetts, the whole Massachusetts way of life is antithetical to the New Hampshire, lived experience. And so now Republicans, it looks like they're trying to get a Massachusetts politician to run for Senate here. And local Republicans are scrambling. They're like, how can we make this make sense? We just spent, a better part of a year telling people not to mass up New Hampshire. Now we're bringing in someone from Massachusetts to run for a very high-level office here. It's making for a very interesting race, and I think we're going to be, there's going to be a lot of attention on it because the juxtaposition of these two things is hilarious.
Somebody might want to point out to them that Eric Hovde, who claimed to be from Wisconsin, though, of course, he lives in Orange County, California, and Dr. Oz, who claimed he was now living in Pennsylvania, though he still had that mega mansion in New Jersey. That didn't work out so well for the Republicans, even if it's a really rich guy. And we love that because they can pay for their campaign and it won't cost us a lot of money. And he can afford to spend his own money and buy all those ads and everything. Voters have a tendency to want their senators to actually be people from their state. I don't know. That message continually seems to get lost on the Republican Party.
Yeah, it's to a certain extent, it's also kind of an indictment of where the state party is, that they can't recruit from within the state. You know, it always strikes me like if you have to pull kind of from outside of the state, you know, someone who's not really from there, what does that say about the bench? You know, that the Republican Party is cultivating. Yeah, and voters don't like that. Voters, they pick up on that. You know, I think it creates huge political liabilities very early on when you try and bring in a ringer, and you know, like people don't like that. They want someone who knows the state that they're from to tackle the important issues. They don't want, you know, and this guy. I mean, this guy, Scott Brown, I mean, he was a Fox News talking head for a long time. You know, he was an ambassador under Trump. I'm sorry, ambassador. It's not really. I don't think a lot of people think of ambassadors as having the toughest job in the world, right?
Yeah.
This is not a very serious political position. So, and, you know, he's, you know, long-time state-level Massachusetts politician, so it remains to be seen how serious this challenge could be. It seems like he's got a lot of liabilities coming into the race. In addition to, you know, he has been very, very fully on board with Team Trump so far. And, you know, New Hampshire is a purple state. Mm-hmm. We did not vote. We voted for Kamala Harris. We did not vote for Donald Trump. And this is a guy who has been very outwardly vocal in his support of some of Donald Trump's, you know, some of his cabinet nominees who are the least qualified and most controversial picks maybe we've ever seen for a cabinet position. He was a good friend of Pete Hegseth, and now, you know, the Secretary of Defense. He has said very good things about RFK Jr. He said,
so he's a fine, all-around fine human being. Well, let's hope the people of New Hampshire pick up on that fine human being in all of his various positions and all of his friends. Anyway, Colin, thank you so much. New Hampshire is always a really interesting bellwether state, and I love to chat with you and find out what's going on there. Thank you for being with us today.
Anytime, John. Talk to you soon.
Yes, you will. We are going to take a break for news. We're going to be back with more after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
I am very happy to welcome back Amanda Marcotte, who is the senior writer at Salon.com. You can also find her on other social media. You can find her on Blue Sky. I am not going to mention Zitter. You can find her at amandamarcotte.bsky.social. At least I think that's Amanda Marcotte because the picture is a cat. So we have Amanda Marcotte here. Let us find out for sure if this cat, who also apparently is from Salon.com, represents Amanda. Amanda, how are you?
Good, and yes, that is my cat.
What's your cat's name?
Orson.
After Orson Welles or Orson Bean, or just because you like the name Orson?
Definitely after Orson Welles. He's our first cut, and I let my partner name that one. I got to name the other two, who are named Freddie and Joey.
A little more lowbrow. I'm not criticizing you, Amanda, but you know, Freddie and Joey, really, okay.
Yes.
We have one cat, and I sort of liked it. I kept the name that the shelter gave her, which I have no idea where they came up with. It was Kellas, Kellas, and it, as near as I can tell, has no reference to anything. But I thought that's a good cat name. It has a nice hard C, so she knows when I'm calling her, and it works out for us. But there's no cool story except that that's what the shelter named her. I was looking through your posts on Blue Sky, and some of the political stuff, well, the outright political stuff, I'm going to get to in a couple of minutes. But Ray, my partner, and I, we had a little disagreement yesterday. Neither of us are huge football fans. I only watch when the Bears are in the Super Bowl, so I haven't watched for a very like since 1985. I really haven't watched. But he did watch the Kendrick Lamar halftime show, and he's just, Ray is just as political as I am, if not more so, and he was saying how amazing it was and how it was a very political statement, and he was like, "You're going to be talking about this on the radio tomorrow." And I'm like, "No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I don't know." But apparently I am, because you also felt that this show was worth commenting on. So tell me what I missed.
About the Kendrick Lamar show?
Yeah, you said Kendrick has elevated being a hater to genius art. Has anyone does it better? What do you mean by that?
I mean, a lot of that show was just about his feud with Drake, the rapper and singer that Kendrick Lamar has been just roasting for months now. And that song he played, "Not Like Us," is basically just a long, vicious diss track against Drake. And he even had Drake's ex-girlfriend, Serena Williams, on stage dancing to mock Drake. It was the pettiest thing I've ever seen in my life, and I love it.
Ray also seemed to, again, talking to somebody who didn't watch it, Ray seemed to think that some of the dancers were costumed in a way that might have led you to believe about racial injustice. He said he thought some of the dancers looked like they were supposed to represent the Klan, but again, I didn't see it. Did you come away with that same feeling?
I did not. I did not. Well, I felt like, they did kind of come out on stage, and initially the dancers shaped the American flag. I don't know if that was Kendrick Lamar making a racialized statement about the importance of Black Americans to American history. Maybe. He might have also just been making fun of Drake, who is a Canadian.
Okay. All right.
I don't know.
Well, it's when you see something like that, sometimes I think you can kind of read into those events the bias that you bring to the table, or the strong feelings that you bring to the table. But I had no interest in any portion of it whatsoever. If I get invited on those rare occasions, I get invited to a Super Bowl party, I'm the one who hangs out by the chip and dip table. So.
Well, I live in Philadelphia, so we're all just extremely happy right now.
Oh, heavens, yes. Congratulations, then.
Thank you. I did it. No, just kidding.
The other thing I wanted to, before I move off this somewhat silly topic, whenever there's a politician that appears at a sporting event, it always seems like there are, when they make an appearance and wave to the crowd, there are people who boo and there are people who cheer. And depending upon the political sources you read, you sometimes hear about one or the other. I didn't watch the Super Bowl, but I did look at some of the social media, and some people were talking about Trump being booed. Now, usually when I get these sound clips, oh, listen to this politician was booed, it never sounds quite as emphatic as I'm led to believe. How did you feel that the crowd felt about Trump being there?
I don't know. I didn't notice like any loud booing, but it's always hard to tell because the crowd noises are, a mixed bag at things like that. But I will point out it was New Orleans, and I think that is a town that is not super keen on Donald Trump or any Republicans. And I definitely can tell you that in Philadelphia, that stadium was mostly Eagles fans and was way tilted towards Eagles fans. And in Philadelphia, we hate Donald Trump. I think Philadelphia voted for Harris more than almost any other city in the country.
Wow. That's interesting. I wonder why the more Kansas folks didn't show up. Come on. They had the opportunity that maybe to see Taylor Swift, for God's sake. Anywho, Amanda Marcotte actually writes a lot of really interesting political articles for Salon.com when she's not covering the Super Bowl. So we are going to take a real quick break, and we are going to talk about some of what she's written when we come right back after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
I'm speaking with the political writer for Salon.com, Amanda Marcotte, and you may have heard or seen a copy of the current Time magazine that shows Elon Musk sitting behind the Resolute desk clearly in the White House. It was speculated at the very beginning that this talk, it's President Musk, would get under Donald Trump's skin. First, when Musk was first telling Speaker Johnson that the budget didn't look good to him, and people started saying, Musk is in charge, Donald Trump put a post out on his own social media saying that he loves Elon Musk, he's great, he's fabulous, he's amazing, but he really needs to stay in his lane. But since that time, we have not heard any criticism, despite the fact that Elon Musk has been in the news front and center, and Donald Trump has not. I personally think that he's doing the same thing with Musk that he's doing with J.D. Vance, is that he's floating all these trial balloons through them, and if one of them or more than one of them blow up, he can blame it on the J.D. Vance or the Elon Musk. Amanda wrote an article why the, quote, President Elon Musk, unquote, mockery doesn't seem to bother Donald Trump. Amanda, talk about your ideas on this weird relationship.
Yeah, so I think it's always been true that Donald Trump, wants to be the president in the same way that he was, a successful businessman on The Apprentice, which is to say, it's all fake, right? He was actually a failed businessman who had bankruptcy many, many times, was deeply in debt, had to be bailed out repeatedly. He was probably the worst businessman of all time. But he was on The Apprentice pretending to be this successful businessman, and I think he realized, it's way more fun to pretend to be the thing than try to actually do the thing, which is hard. Actually working is hard, and you're going to fail because Donald Trump is real dumb. And so, showing up, a couple hours a week to read a script and then having everyone flatter you and assume you're a great businessman is way better than, the actual trying to be a businessman. And I think he's kind of approaching the presidency in a similar way, especially in the second term, and his being enabled by all the people around him, which is he wants the presidency to be about getting his picture taken while he's signing documents, running the Kennedy Center.
I was just going to say, what a stupid thing. If you're the president of the United States, you shouldn't have time to run the Kennedy Center, for God's sake. But the woman who resigned as head of the Kennedy Center, Deborah Rutter, was here in Chicago running the Chicago Symphony for a number of years and was very well thought of, was very much liked. And, she resigned right after Trump was elected, but before he turned his sights to the Kennedy Center. And she was like, guys, it's been great. Everything's great. And she did a lot of good for them. But she's like, I'm out of here. Thanks for all the good stuff. And we are actually, some of us are hoping that she comes back to Chicago because she was really good at her job. But anyway, she resigns. And Donald Trump says, oh, yeah, by the way, I'm going to fire the whole board. And then I'm going to install myself as head of the Kennedy Center. Because why, Amanda? Why was it he wanted to do that?
I mean, I think that Donald Trump, he is just basically, especially at his advanced age, just like a meat sack of grievances, right? And he just doesn't have anything else going on in his life. And the Kennedy Center sort of represents the kind of people that never would accept him no matter how much money he claimed he had, right? The tasteful elite, like people like the Kennedys, right? Except for RFK. Yeah. And so I think he's basically smearing his grime all over the Kennedy Center as just this petty act of revenge on people that never wanted to be around him because, well, I mean, who wants to be around him? He's nasty.
Yeah. And what does this mean? That we're going to see Kid Rock? Because, honestly, the people who openly support Donald Trump, they tend not to be the A-listers.
Yeah, and exactly. It's just going to be degrading the Kennedy Center for the next 4 years. And that sucks, but it's certainly not it's interesting to me that his staff is not only allowing, but I think possibly encouraging him to waste all his time on nonsense like this so that he stays out of their hair.
Exactly. I was thinking to myself, Susie Wiles has got to be, oh, thank God. Oh, thank God. Another thing, in addition to golfing, where we can get him out of the Oval Office and where the rest of us who are left here can, make some decisions and get some stuff done.
Yeah, exactly. And it's clear that, the real president is Elon Musk, but in a sense, I don't think, and worse, Elon Musk is not just trying to be the real president. He's trying to be a dictator. He's actually trying to end the concept of the presidency as we know it. He's trying to because the presidency is supposed to just be an executive who executes the laws, not, I am the state, not a king. Musk is really trying to make himself more of a king. And, I don't, it's kind of interesting because I don't think Trump would, get in his way. I think that they kind of agree on this, view that they'd like the White House to be, functionally a monarchy, functionally a dictatorship. But, Trump is very dumb. And he would I don't think it's that he disagrees ideologically or that he would try to get in the way and protect democracy. He wants to end it as much as Musk does. But he is very dumb, and I think he could, screw things up for them just by trying to stick his fingers in it. So they're giving old man Trump some busy work to do while Musk executes a deeply sinister plan.
Well, I've been thinking that for quite a while with the Heritage Foundation saying, oh, by the way, if you get reelected, you don't have to worry about what government's going to do. Look, we put this nice little booklet together for you. And, oh, you don't even have to read it. We're going to give you some names. You put those people in positions of power and they'll do it. And it'll be okay. I think that a lot of people with a lot of power and a lot of money have finally come to realize that Donald Trump is a useful idiot.
Yeah. In fact, Elon Musk and J.D. Vance are big fans of this fake philosopher named Curtis Yarvin. He's really just a blogger, but and he's a computer programmer, but he pretends to be a philosopher, a political philosopher. And he wrote this important essay called The Butterfly Effect, where he basically described what is going on. He said, use Donald Trump as this figurehead because he's easy to control, right? Mm-hmm. And then have somebody else come in and actually take the wrecking ball to government. He literally said, I don't have the quote in front of me right this second. I can pull it up. But he literally said, and I quote, I have it here. The real leader would be a dictator who, quote, will run the executive branch without any interference from Congress or courts. And he said that people need to get over their, what he called, dictator phobia. So this is actually a plan. You can find it online. It's not that hard. The whole idea was use Donald Trump as a figurehead, have somebody else come in, evacuate all the powers of Congress and the presidency and the courts, and run the country as a dictatorship. And that is obviously what Musk is trying to do.
And, I think that it would be so easy to sell this kind of idea to him, partly because of what I said before. We'll put J.D. Vance out there and we'll put Elon Musk out there. And then if it all blows up, you can just get rid of them and you can say that it was never your idea, it was never your fault. Because remember, in his first term, I don't know if the audience remembers this, but a lot of Donald Trump's cabinet members had to resign because of corruption, because they were spending government money on private jets and fancy vacations. And of course, almost all of those cases, they were referred to Bill Barr for criminal prosecution. And shockingly, Bill Barr decided not to prosecute any of them. But, so Donald Trump has always not understood what people are doing, but pretended when they do something bad that it has nothing to do with him. Just like when he was campaigning and he said, I don't even know what Project 2025 is. I don't know what it is. Would somebody tell me what it is? It's certainly not anything to do with me. And, it always amazes me, Amanda, and we don't have time to get into this before we go to a break, but Donald Trump says what people want to hear, but then he doesn't do what people want him to do. Like the woman from South Florida who represents the Venezuelans there who are under temporary protected status. And she was beside herself doing a news conference that the Republicans lied to them. They said that Donald Trump was going to protect them, that they were going to be okay. These are documented immigrants. And suddenly Donald Trump says, with the stroke of a pen, TPS, I'm getting rid of it. Forget about it. And Stephen Colbert, I think, had the best quote. He said, people who didn't like Donald Trump in his first term somehow forgot about that. But they are going to very quickly relearn the fact that, oh, yeah, we didn't like that guy last time. He lied to us. And you know what? I don't think we like him this time either. But that's when we come back from this break, Amanda, I want to talk to you about this idea that people just believe what he says without any kind of critical thought or even looking at what he did before and whether or not he fulfilled his promises last time around. It is staggering to me. The people who voted for Donald Trump, and I believe had no clue what was really going to happen when he took office. Amanda Marcotte is the political writer for Salon.com. She also is part of a political newsletter group that Salon puts out that is also great to subscribe to. We are going to take a break and have more conversation with her right after this.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
And I am joined by senior politics writer at Salon.com, Amanda Marcotte. And today, I think this was just published today, she has an article, Women is a banned word. Trump uses trans panic to strip rights from all women. Amanda, I did not pay close attention when he was going after trans. You clearly were. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, so Donald Trump has written a set of executive orders. Some are explicitly going after trans people. Some are, it's just sort of embedded in the executive order. But over and over, they claim that they're protecting women from trans people. They've ginned up this whole theory that women are in danger from having to share, cis women are in danger of having to share bathrooms with trans people, or having trans women on their sports teams, of which that's very rare. Mm-hmm. But when you actually look at the text of the executive orders, it's actually a stalking horse for what the real agenda is, which is stripping the federal government of all sorts of language and concepts and ideas that allow the federal government to protect women's equality and women's rights. So, for instance, one of the executive orders lambasts what they call gender ideology over and over again, which they claim is just about trans people, but when you read between the lines, it's basically banning the federal government from acknowledging in any way that people, that gender and sexuality have any role in oppression or violence, right? So the military canceled all their sexual assault prevention trainings because the executive order was very clear that you can't be talking about sexuality and gender in this way. Title IX at universities is the program that ensures women's equality and, in fact, forces universities to fund women's sports and public schools. It also has all these rules in there about preventing sexual assault and harassment on campus. Trump rolled all that back, and he claims he's doing it to protect women from trans people. But obviously women are way more danger of being sexually harassed and assaulted by, men.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I've always thought, Donald Trump, he's all about anger. Right after he was elected, Amanda, I didn't get a lot of Trump trolls when he was running, but after he was elected, there were a significant number of Trump trolls on my text line. And instead of being joyously happy that their guy won, they were all so angry. They were still angry. They were mad about stuff. They were, mad about this and they were mad about that. And I got tired of responding, dude, your guy won. This is where you're supposed to be happy. Because trust me, if my candidate had won, I'd be like, yay, me. And I was gobsmacked. And it's like anger is at their core. They can't let go of this addiction they have to anger. And I think Donald Trump plays that beautifully. Oh, you should be angry at immigrants. They're taking your jobs. Oh, you should be angry at trans people because I don't quite know why. But the larger issue is that it's a way of attacking women. I had a soundbite from Whoopi Goldberg, who responded after Trump's new communications person. I refer to her as the angry blonde woman. She apparently made a statement to the White House press corps that there was not going to be any more woke, and there certainly wasn't going to be any woke in this room. And Whoopi Goldberg of The View said, do you understand that the reason you have your job is because of woke women like me who protested and made a fuss, and because women weren't given those kinds of opportunities? And, now you're basically saying, you have no understanding of that, and basically, screw you. And she was like, we are the reason, us woke women are the reason that you, angry blonde woman, have that job. Wake up and smell the coffee. So this is absolutely part of a war on women. It is not just about trans. It is about knowing that if you are limited to who you are at birth, you are born with female genitalia. That means you will be labeled this way and you will live within these guardrails. It's all of us. It's all of us.
Yeah, I say in the piece something I think I really want people to think about, which is the reason they are so interested in having these rigid lines between men and women and these is so that they know which ones are the powerful ones and which ones are the subjugated ones, right? And it doesn't, they think this makes clean biological sense, but it doesn't actually. I got some hate mail from a Trumper today, and he was like, you think it's that men and women are, that men can be women, blah, 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 and he's like, but women are the people who bleed once a month and have babies. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, so I deleted it. I'm not going to reply to this guy, but I hear this argument a lot, and I just have to point out that means you're saying menopausal women aren't women.
Uh-huh. Speaking as a postmenopausal woman, I would take issue with that.
Yeah, I've never had any children. I'm getting closer to menopause, but I think I'm a woman. I think I count,
Yeah. I think you count too, but that's it. There was a young woman on TikTok who I stumbled across, and she was saying to her audience, why Republicans are so upset about gender is they want to have clearly defined sex roles so that they can clearly define the hierarchy. You're a woman and men are over women. But if it gets all gray and blurry, it puts that whole system at risk.
Yeah, and you can really see this come out in the sports talk because they claim they're trying to protect women's sports from trans women. But always implicit in that argument is that women's sports aren't real sports, and that women's and you could see it in Donald Trump, the speech he gave when he signed the EO. He attacked a woman that competed in boxing in the Paris Olympics, and he called her a man. She's not. She was assigned female at birth. She's not a trans woman. She's not anything. She's just
that. Yeah, I remember when that controversy erupted during the Olympics, and she was a boxer, and she's not trans. She wasn't born with male anatomy. She's the kind of woman they like, the woman that was born with female genitalia and considers herself female. How about it?
Except they don't like her because she's tall and she's muscular and she looks like a boxer and she's kind of looks a little butch. And so it is that. It's not just about how you were assigned at birth. It's their way of saying that. They're kind of subtly implying that women who compete in sports aren't feminine enough. And mark my words, this is just them trying to creak open the door into attacking women's sports as a whole.
Yeah, it is. It's this incremental thing where, first we're going to go after the trans people, and then we're going to pass legislation that defines, gender and sexuality. And it's this, at what point do we stand up and say no? Because it's like one of those things that by the time it's overwhelming, we will have been overwhelmed. But sometimes I know that it feels like there are too many battles to fight. Amanda, do you ever, having to report on this, do you ever just feel like there's just so much that you don't even know where to focus and you don't know where today to bring the fight?
Yes. I was complaining about that to my editor this morning, which is why I'm very grateful for her, because I throw out 5-6 ideas, and she helps me pick the one that she thinks, will be good today. But it is overwhelming. I try not to get overwhelmed. I try to remind myself that we are incredibly privileged to be paid to fight back every day and to tell the truth every day.
Yeah. And sometimes, when I do my show, particularly on Mondays, there's really important stuff that I don't even talk about because I would rather talk in more detail about a few things and make sure people really understand what's happening, why it's happening, who's responsible, how to fight it. But if you really give that kind of context, you have to take some terrible things off the table because there just isn't enough time to deal with all of it. Amanda and I are going to take a real quick break. We are going to be back with more after this.
Don't turn that dial.
A dangerous mistake to make.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. Returns right now on WCPT 820.
I was just talking with senior writer at Salon.com, Amanda Marcotte, about this tsunami of executive orders and J.D. Vance nonsense and Elon Musk outrageousness that seems to be our daily life and how to cope with it. What in the political world that you have seen and reported on, what is giving you hope? What is bringing you solace these days? A person, an issue, anything?
I think it's a little tough, but I'm hoping. The thing about the Elon Musk attempted government takeover, we really do need to focus on the word attempted, because the reality is that they're trying something that's never been tried before. They're all pretty dumb people, and they're meeting more resistance than I think they thought they would. Certainly, there was the percentage of federal workers that resigned after Musk sent out that email threatening them all was actually very, very low. A lot of them went online anonymously to forums like Reddit and stuff, and they were like, "Screw you, I'm staying." Mm-hmm. If you want to purge me. And they're digging their heels in. At the FBI, they're digging their heels in. There was an attempt to just mass fire all these people. And I think that it's not legal. They can't do it. People are digging in. They're getting court orders. Their unions are suing. And I think it's galvanizing on that level. I'm a little worried that the average American is unaware of what's going on and what it means for them.
I think the average American will become aware of it when it affects them. If their Social Security check is late, or I heard from somebody whose family relied on Meals on Wheels, and there were a few days where they didn't come, and I think that's the kind of pain that is going to make people wake up and realize that they have made a mistake.
Yeah, Head Start. Head Start got defunded, and they're still trying to figure out how to get their money because, they said they unfroze it, but the money's not flowing. And that's child care for 800,000 families.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to tell you, Amanda, this is not directed at you. This is directed at me. One of our listeners texted in to me, "Joan, please stop the 'it's so overwhelming, woe is me' take just one page from Black history and use your privilege." And I say to that person, "You're right. By gosh, you're right." And I will try to not be overwhelmed, and I will pick my battles, and I will resist as best I can. And again, Amanda, that was directed at me, not you. But, I have found that my listeners, generally there's a sort of a version of that that's more positive. That's thank you for, because I do try to talk about, hey, this is something that went right yesterday, and isn't that great? And let's focus on this for a minute. I do try to be positive, and I am certainly going to resist. And because I think that I do have a privilege aside from my elderly age and my race. I have the privilege of having this microphone, and I want to try to help people be informed so that they can know what to do and how to do it. And folks, one of the best ways to stay informed is to read people like Amanda. And I would also suggest following her on social media, because she brings the snark to politics. And, I like that.
You gotta laugh. I mean, even when it's hard. I think maybe especially when it's hard.
And I think a sense of humor is one of the main things that's going to get us through these times. If we don't have sometimes the ability to laugh at the absurdity, which doesn't mean you just roll over and let it happen. But, you are exactly right, Amanda. I think one of the things in our favor is the fact that Donald Trump and Elon Musk and J.D. Vance, they are trying to do so much. They are so overreaching and being so offensive and so outrageous that, honestly, if they did things a little more slowly and a little more reasonably, they could accomplish much more on a longer-term legal basis. Let's write a law and let's run it through our Congress and our Senate and get it passed. No, they want to just write an executive order that today the sky is green and not expect that people will push back. I think their own ineptitude is one of our strengths. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, they're fascists, right? And I think it's where you need to sort of think about this is fascists have a theory of humanity that's just wrong. They just think that the only thing that matters is power and dominance. They don't believe in compassion. They don't believe in empathy. They don't believe in cooperation. And that's why fascism always inevitably, it may take a while. Sometimes it takes decades, but it fails. It fails because they have this really flat, ugly view of humanity that simply isn't true. And so I agree, like, resistance works. I think people shouldn't, we just don't, the number one thing people need to do is refuse to, let their BS get into your head. Don't let them tell you that their view of the world and their flat, ugly, nasty, shallow view of humanity is correct. People have love, people have empathy, people work together. We didn't build great countries and giant cities by just stepping on each other's heads, People had to work together. And, I have a piece going up tomorrow about, how Elon Musk particularly is being a moron, because all of his money, all of his fortune, everything he has was basically given to him by other people who did the work. And they did the work often with government funding. They invented the internet with government funding. They invented spaceships with government funding. All the tech that Tesla relies on for their electric cars, thank you, government funding. And, they're crapping all over. They're trying to steal stuff that people built with the goodness and the hard work, right? And they're trying to claim that none of that exists. And I think we can resist. We can say, no, I believe in people. And I don't, and I think that as long as you kind of keep that resistance in your heart and in your head, it will be easier to sort of decide what your action is going to be.
Mm-hmm. One thing I've been telling my listeners, because it is a lot coming at you all at once, and I've been telling people to find the issues that you are very passionate about. Find the things that, make your heart beat faster, whether that's, libraries, book banning, immigrant rights, whether it is abortion rights. Find that one thing and really pay attention to what's going on with that thing. Find the newsletter that addresses that issue. Find the activist group that fights for that issue. And I think that's a way to get through this by not being so overwhelmed. What are your thoughts?
I think that's exactly right. And it gets to what I was saying about, like, how remembering that we're a community and that we all have to work together in solidarity with each other is, I think, really helpful. Like, no one has to do it all themselves. That's not possible. Yeah. Like, to your point, like, they're trying to, like, destroy everything in rapid order just kind of by themselves because they don't believe in solidarity to the extent that we do, I think. And so, like, think of our community as any community is a bunch of different people doing their part, but nobody has to do it all. That's not possible. And we can lean on each other. Like, you do what's good for you, and somebody else will do what's good for them. And hopefully those pieces will come together as a whole.
Yeah. I think that kind of attitude, that kind of plan is what is going to hold us together and get us through. And I'm hoping and praying, A, that we have midterm elections, and B, that people take some of this energy and make sure that the midterm elections, at the very least, Democrats need to retake the House of Representatives. I know that there are a bunch of Republican senators who are up for re-election. Some of those are deeply red states, but I think we have to make an effort to reclaim some of those seats as well. And then we will have a much stronger mechanism for thwarting and slowing down Donald Trump's worst efforts. Thoughts, Amanda?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think the thing is, like, Elon Musk, this is why I take heart in the fact that he's a really stupid person. Like, he thinks you can just smash the federal government and that it won't hurt their project, right? But our society, like, its function depends on all of these jobs in these offices and money, right? And if you smash it, like, things that he depends on, things that Trump depends on are going to fall apart and their power will get weakened. So, like, and they're going to realize that fairly quickly. Once one system fails because of what they're doing, they're going to be scrambling. And that means that Congress and their power of the purse is going to matter. So if Democrats control that, they have real leverage over Trump because he's going to need the government. He's going to need money. You can't, like, you don't do a fascist takeover of a federal government and not have the federal government. You know, there's a reason that you want those institutions in your control.
Well, it is, there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to write about. And Amanda and I are not giving up anytime soon. So thank you, Amanda, for sharing your work with us. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on. I always enjoy it.
Amanda Marcotte, senior writer for Salon.com. That's going to do it for me. Driving it home, of course, with Patty Vasquez is up next. She's going to be joined by Matt McNeil, host of the Matt McNeil Show, which is on WCPT weeknights at 9 o'clock. Richard Chu tomorrow at 6 a.m. Is going to be talking to the Center for Popular Democracy, among others. And tomorrow I'm going to welcome back one of my favorite people to talk to, John Shaw, who directs the Paul Simon Public Policy Institute. And remember, tomorrow's Tuesday, so we will have Rich Eberwein, and he's going to bring us 3 stories we missed that were on our cousin, heartlandsignal.com, our digital cousin. Have a great evening tonight. Try to find something that brings you a little bit of joy. I think it's going to be a daily assignment, not just for the weekends anymore. Have a good evening, my friends. Good night.